following is a true story, and it includes the account of my friend, who I will refer to as Kasky, and of myself. We were in basic military training for the Navy, which is more or less boot camp, and we were nearing the end of our stay and moving on to the fleet soon enough. As you can imagine, people get pretty close in basic. So close that one night my friend Kasky decided to share her account of something that she never gave a name to. Me, Kasky, and two others sat around our bunks after lights out, each of us sharing spooky stories that we've heard and joking along the way. Kasky remained silent the entire time, seeming conflicted. She eventually worked up to telling us about her home in Indiana, and about a few minor scares that she swore were true. We quickly moved back to our own stories when she had stopped talking, but she still seemed distant. We badgered her for a while, until she finally caved, and then she spoke of it. She said that she never really gave the entity a name, believing that by attaching a name to it, it would give it power over her, and that it would return if she spoke the name for it. As crazy as it sounded to me at the time, it seems that she may have had some grounds in her beliefs, but we'll get to that later. Kasky was only 8 at the time of the incident, living in a very old 2-story house. She'd had a few minor paranormal encounters in the house already, but none that ever left a lasting impression on her, not like it did. Even as she began to speak of it, she started to grow pale. Her eyes would dart from side to side, as if she was worried that it was going to come back and finish what it had started 15 years ago. As I said, she was 8 at the time, and she recalled that it was 2:37 in the morning, a time that she will never forget. She said she woke up, feeling the need to utilize the bathroom down the hall. She rose from her bed and tiptoed along the wooden floors en route to the bathroom when she heard something coming up the stairs. It moved slowly, and it sounded as if it was on all fours, but Kasky didn't have a dog. She said that she was frozen in fear, being unable to break for the bathroom or to return to her own room, and so she just stood there silently, as the sound of paws echoed up the stairs. She says it eventually reached the top, and what she faced brought sweat to her brow, and it still sends shivers down her spine to this day. She described it as having the body of a very large and hairless dog, and that it stood about 3.5 feet while it was still on all fours. Its head was not that of a dog, however, but it had somewhat of a human appearance, except that it was flipped upside down, and it had the teeth of an anglerfish. Its eyes were 2 black pits, which seemed to be choking out the surrounding light, but there was a faint shimmer in the middle of each, as if looking through a long tunnel. Its nose were merely slits, and its nails seemed to have talons, scratching on the hardwood floor as it walked. She and it stared at each other for only a moment before Kasky turned and ran into her room. She'd slam the door shut and hide under her blanket, but it wouldn't give up so easily. The sound of the door creaking open was the only sign Kasky received that the beast had followed her. She slowly peered from under her covers, only to find it standing at the end of her bed, peering at her with its pitch-black eyes. Suddenly it jumped, grabbing her by the foot and dragging her into the middle of the room, slinging her around like a rag doll before she blacked out. She awoke the next morning with deep bite marks marking her legs, and she was covered from head to toe in bruises and scratches. She said that she had told her mother, but her mother had not believed her. Instead, the mother had thought that she had been attacked by a dog some previous day, or another child had beaten her up. Regardless, she never spoke of it again, except to us, of course, on that night. We sat in silence for a moment, digesting the story that Kasky had just told us. It wasn't long before we decided that we were all tired, and we went to sleep. That should be the end of the story, but it wasn't. You see, I decided to send Kasky a message over a social networking site, mentioning it not by its nameless identity, but by a name that I had conjured for it. She told me to never speak of it again, and then immediately blocked me so I couldn't question her further. Or maybe it was because she didn't want to have the name stuck in her own head. Either way, after this, it came from me. It started slowly at first, shadows in the dark, roaming the house, as it may have done with Kasky without her realizing it, but I did. I left after the next week after hearing it scratching on my door, which I locked to prevent it from entering, but I can't be sure if that would have stopped it. I drove roughly 300 miles to see my boyfriend for a while, staying in a nearby hotel. I thought I was safe here. I thought the distance would have somehow made some sort of difference, but one night, by chance, I looked out the hotel window and was greeted by it. Now, that's not to say that it was right next to my window, because it wasn't. I was 3 stories up. But I had a clear view of my car, and of the 3.5-foot dog shadow that was circling it and scratching at the door. I watched it for a while, but then the fear got to me, and I knew I had to move away from the window lest it saw me and knew my location. I would have written it off as a normal dog, except it kept coming back and circling my car night after night. After I returned home, I immediately moved out of my house and into an apartment. You see, I have this theory. I'm thinking that it might be thrown off by the smell of other people, and that's why it goes for the scent on my car rather than me. So far, it's worked. I haven't had the beast in my living area since, but every night, when nobody is awake, it returns to my vehicle. I always see it scratching at the door, searching for me. I fear that one day it might follow my scent to the 4th floor. It wants to visit. It wants to see that person who gave it power over herself with something so simple as a name.